بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وموالاه. So inshallah we were going through the chapter Babu ma ja'a fi mizahi Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the chapter regarding the humor, the jokes of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a very humorous personality. Everybody felt at ease with him. Because one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ was that the Prophet ﷺ himself mentions, he says that فَضِّلْتُ عَلَى الْأَنْبِيَاءِ بِسِتٍ, Allah has given me virtue over other prophets with 6 things. One of them is وَنُصِرْتُ بِالرَّعْبِ مَسِيرَةَ الشَّهْرِ, a person is 1 month distance away from me, but he still has this fear, divine awe of me. So a person would come, who is this Muhammad? Who is this Muhammad? I don't know, how am I going to face him? I don't know, how am I going to face him? With this kind of, honorable respect, honorable fear, a respectful fear, he would come. And if the Prophet ﷺ was a very serious personality, then how would they get along with him? That is why he was a very humorous personality, and that's how they brought Iman on him. This was his miracle. So inshallah, before we move on, I will just mention the 2 points which were relating to his laughter. Like I mentioned, he never used to laugh. Most of the time he used to smile. And even his laughter wasn't the laughter that we do today, filled with noises. It was without noise. And the amount of time he may have laughed in such a way that his teeth shone, his teeth actually became visible, or about 20 times. Sahaba could actually count them on the fingers. Most of the time he would smile, just a smile, and that would just make everything. He would relate an extraordinary account regarding divine matters and laughed, such that his molars showed there was no noise to it. His molars were essentially, his laughter was essentially smile, and he smiled a lot. He smiled specifically at some of his companions whenever he saw them. Smile. He just breaks the ice, as we say. You smile at somebody, you're walking around with a serious face, you don't smile, then people find it difficult to walk around with. Last week we went through the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Anas radiallahu anh, Ya dhal udhunayn, or the one with the ears, or the one with the... It could be because he may have sharp hearing. So he's got some ears, and nowadays we say, he's got some ears. Meaning he can hear anything. He can hear. So very sharp hearing. So inshallah, moving on to the next hadith, which was regarding the Prophet ﷺ calling somebody, Anas ibn Malik, Anas ibn Malik himself, again same Sahabi, who had a little brother, by the name of, the name of the child is not mentioned, but the Prophet ﷺ called him Abu Umair. So he had a little bird, the little brother of Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik was like the servant. I don't know if I mentioned it here before, but when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina Munawwara, now because he was in his 50s and he was getting aged, he was about 53, 54, so he wanted help with some of the works, responsibilities were getting more on him, because in Mecca there were only Muslims few in number, in Medina Muslims were getting larger in number, and there were many responsibilities he had to do, so he wanted somebody who could help him with the daily tasks. So Salma radiallahu anha came and she said, O Prophet of Allah, take my 10-year-old son Anas. So Anas radiallahu anhu said, I was 10 years old that time. And the Prophet ﷺ said, okay, he will stay with me. So whenever the Prophet ﷺ wanted anything, he would tell Anas radiallahu anhu. Anas radiallahu anhu was a child at the end of the day, 10-year-old, 10, 12, 13, around that age, as he was. And sometimes the Prophet of Allah would tell him to do something and he would end up playing on the way. The Prophet of Allah would tell him, go and fetch this. He would be on his way and he would see some children kicking a ball, so he would start kicking the ball with them. Then after a while, long time, the Prophet of Allah would come along. He said, Anas, where were you meant to be going? They say, okay, I will do it now. So this type of personality. So then Anas radiallahu anhu says, and he was with the Prophet of Allah till the Prophet of Allah left this world. 10 years. So he was 10 till he became 20. So he says, خَدِمْتُ النَّبِيَّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ 10 سِنِينَ. I served the Prophet of Allah for 10 years. فَمَا قَالَ لِي أُفْ. He never said uff to me. وَلَا لِمَا صَنَعْتَ. Why didn't you do this? Why did you do this? So he had a little brother. So the Prophet, and who had a little bird as a pet. People keep pigeons, birds as pets. So the Prophet ﷺ jokingly said to him, Ya Aba Umair ma fa'al al-Nughair. O Abu Umair, how is your Nughair? Just by this statement, Ya Aba Umair ma fa'al al-Nughair, the fuqaha, the muhaddithun have such deep insight that they have deduced over 100 masail just from this statement. He was a little child. Can you give a child the kunniya, a pet name of Abu? He's still a child. The Prophet of Allah called him Abu Umair. Then the Prophet of Allah gave a name to the bird. Are you allowed to give name to birds? Another issue. Then can you keep birds as pets? Another issue. You know? And so many different issues. Now the Prophet of Allah is, then the little bird died as well. He was very emotional. He used to sit around just thinking about the bird. Sometimes, when children are small, then the whole world is their toys. That's all they live for. They have these collection of toys. They have these specific things which they play around with. And that's their life. If anybody takes that away from them, they become emotional. They start crying. That's their life. That's the type of phase they're going through. Then as a person grows older, when he goes in his teens, when he goes in his 20s, then when he looks back at that time, he starts laughing at his own self. How naive I was when I was 4 years old, 3 years old. I used to start crying over these things. I used to start fighting over these things. And I used to become emotional over these things. I never used to eat because if anybody touched any of my toys. Similarly, Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah says, Mufti Taqi Damat Barakatuh's father, he said the world is the same. When a person will go in the Akhirah, when he will go to Jannah, when he will look back into this world, he say, how naive I was. I was fighting over these businesses. I was fighting over my bank balance. I was fighting over the houses. I became emotional about my car. I became emotional about my family. Like the way a person feels naive when he grows older about what he did in his childhood. Similarly, what a person did in his lifetime, he will be ashamed and he will feel so naive about it when he will go in the Akhirah. Because our real home, our real focus should be the Akhirah. حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد حدثنا خالد بن عبد الله عن حميد عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه أن رجلا استحمل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال إني حاملك على ولد ناقة فقال يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما أصنع بولد الناقة فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهل تلد الإبل إلا النوق. Anas ibn Malik رضي الله عنه says that a person requested from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم that he be given a conveyance. So Prophet of Allah, I want something to mount to travel with. So the Prophet ﷺ replied, a child of a camel shall be given to you. आपको एक ऊँट का बच्चा दे देंगे, we'll give you a little child. So the person said, what shall I do with a child of a camel? More than it can carry me around, I will be carrying it around. More than the camel will carry me around, the child of a camel, I'll have to carry that thing around. I want one for a conveyance, meaning something that will carry me around. The Prophet ﷺ replied, isn't every camel a child of another camel? Isn't every camel a child of another camel? The person thought that he would be given a small camel, which is unfit for riding. In this hadith, besides joking, it also points to the fact that a person should carefully listen and understand what the other person is saying. He shouldn't just come to a conclusion, what shall I do with this? Listen, like this person, he just said that, what shall I do with a child? But isn't one camel the child of another camel? Listen. So, how the Prophet of Allah in a humorous way gave him answer. So, the statement of the Prophet ﷺ to Anas radiallahu anhu was to joke with him and showed his humbleness as he joked with his, with children, with his servants. Then in another hadith that we did last week, Al-Bayjuri rahmatullahi alayhi states that the statement of the Prophet ﷺ was said to praise Anas radiallahu anhu of being an attentive listener who understands the words he hears, meaning who the one with the ears, accurately. The humorous aspect of the statement is that it gives the impression that the person possesses no sense except for that which emanates from the ears. Now regarding the bird, some notes here. Ibn Hajar Haythami rahmatullahi alayhi says, An-Nughair is a type of bird, and the Prophet ﷺ used a kunniya to call a child to bring joy to his heart, as he knew that his bird had died. Al-Baghawi said, this hadith shows that it is allowed to rhyme if it is natural and intended. You're allowed to rhyme. You can make something rhyme. You shouldn't waste all your time with it. Now making poetry, rhyming things is like history. Because we don't use our mind today. We just depend too much on our phones. Before our parents, grandparents could remember hundreds of numbers by heart. Today we can't even remember our own. Listen? Yeah, like we were in one place in Jamaat and one brother, he lost his phone. So we told him, can you phone your house or something? He says, I don't know the number of my house. I should just click home, I need to go. So now that part of the memory, Allah has kept, Allah has put all these little, parts, dividers, in the memory. How you have, where everything has a little part. So that part of the memory have now become stagnated. It's not being used. So it's become frozen. It's become frozen, unused. So it's like literally getting out of order. So Allah has made the human memory such that the more you use, the more it sharpens. And the less you use, the more it weakens. You know? It's not that now you had 10 gig, so you've used 9 gig, you've only got 1 gig left. No. Allah, the more you use, the more divine gigs Allah increases. The more divine gigs Allah increases. So that is why we come across many ulama, they have so much knowledge, filled with knowledge, because they are using the brain, and Allah is making the brain even sharper. Allah is making it even more. And on the other hand, you get people, like myself, who don't use it, so they don't know anything, because it's not being used at all. The fiqh of this hadith is some points. He has mentioned only 5 out of the 100 or plus points. It is allowed to have birds in a cage to enjoy their color or play as long as they are fed and looked after. You cannot, abuse them. You cannot be, nasty to them. You cannot oppress them in any way. You cannot do any of these things. If you look after them properly, feed them. The Prophet ﷺ was asked regarding a woman who performed all her salah, even tahajjud salah, but she was very nasty to the cuts. A cut she had, she never used to feed the cut, and she just didn't even let the cut out so she can look for her own food, because of which the cat died. The Prophet of Allah ﷺ said, she is in fire due to that abuse that she did to an animal. It is allowed to call children with a kunniyah, the father of so and so. It is allowed to joke so as long as joke does not involve sins. To have fun is good, you should have fun. But to make fun out of someone, completely haram. To make fun out of someone, especially if the person feels insulted, he feels offended, you're not doing something good. It shows the kind manners and compassion of the Prophet ﷺ. It is from the recommended good manners to look after the vulnerable ones and bring happiness to their hearts. Now, many people, they have these, especially children, they have this set mindset. They've already had this set. Like a person, he came to Hazrat Thanwi Rahmatullahi. So the person, Hazrat Thanwi Rahmatullahi, told him, do you have any children? He said, yes, I've got children. He said, bring your children next time you come. I want to see your children. Hazrat Thanwi Rahmatullahi had no children. Amazing. That's also another miracle, amazing qudrat of Almighty Allah. People used to come to him and tell him, Hazrat, we can't, can you give us some dua, some verse of the Quran, some wazifa, something which we can have children? He used to give it to them. They used to have children. He never had no children. He never had no children. To the extent that his wife told him that maybe there's something wrong with my health, that is why we don't have any children, maybe you should get married again. So then the wife found him another wife. Still Allah hadn't written anything for him. Like this person, he came to Hazrat Maulana Ahmad Lal Sahab, Damat Barakatum. He said, Allah bin Nizamuddin, he comes here sometime. She said, can you take me to Hazrat Ji? Hazrat Ji was alive that time, in the 90s. She said, this brother is coming here. So he's got he wants you to make dua. He's been married for 20 years, he's got no children. So he took him to Hazrat Ji. She said, this brother is complaining that he's married for 20 years, no children, can you make dua? He said, by the way, make dua for myself as well, Maulana Ahmad Lal himself. He said, I've been married for 40 years, I haven't got children. He said, I've been married 40 years, no children. So the Prophet ﷺ used to have this jovial thing. So Hazrat Thanwi Rahmatullahi, he told him that bring your children. So the next day, or whenever the next time he came, he brought his children. So the children were jumping around and running around and kids are kids. So he started shouting at them that, oh no, we are sitting by Hazrat, behave yourself, sit down. So then they all sat down, really, he must have told them off that if you don't behave, then I'm going to do this and that to you. So then they all sat down. So Hazrat looked at them, he said, ye to farishte le kya hai? These are angels you brought to me. I want you to look at kids. The fact that they were running around, jumping around shows that they are children. If they are just sitting there, ye to farishte hai. They're not kids. The whole enjoyment of kids is in the way they are. Abdul Razak al-Badr said the Prophet ﷺ joked, but his joke did not include anything unlawful. No unlawful things. As all of his statements were truthful. Like when he joked with this person that I'm going to give you a little, child of a camel. Al-Bayjuri says the response of the Prophet ﷺ to the reaction of the man teaches us that one should contemplate the word he hears and not rush to respond and reject a statement or offering until after it is understood well. So these are some of the things we learn from this hadith. Inshallah, moving on to the next hadith. حدثنا عباس بن محمد الدوري حدثنا علي بن حسن ابن الشقيق أنبأنا عبد الله بن مبارك عن أسامة بن زيد عن سعيد المقبري عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قالوا يا رسول الله إنك تداعبنا قال نعم غير إني لا أقول إلا حقا. Subhanallah, what amazing words. May Allah grant us understanding. May Allah grant us the ability to follow each and every lifestyle of the Prophet ﷺ, even in our jokes. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu says, the Prophet reports, the Sahaba, they asked, O Prophet of Allah, you joke with us? O Prophet of Allah, you joke with us? So the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, I do. I can crack some jokes if you want me to. But I do not say anything but the truth. I don't say anything but the truth. The reason that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum asked is because it had been prohibited to joke in the early stages, like it is also against the dignity of great people to do so. Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam informed that it has nothing to do with my cheerfulness. This has been discussed at the beginning of the chapter. You know, some of the pious people used to purposely joke so much that people used to say, this guy is not pious, this guy is a joker. You know? Just to hide the piety. Purposely. You know, sometimes, you know, we say, you know, I am so pious, I don't want to put anybody off. You know, they are respecting me on a certain level. So if I joke too much, they may say, this guy is a joker. They may lose their respect for me. But the pious people used to think the other way around. They used to think the other way around. They used to say that I am so pious that only between me and Allah. What's that good to the people to know for? I should joke so much with the people that even if they are coming towards me, due to my excessive joking, they should turn away from me, that this guy doesn't look pious, he's always joking around, he looks like a proper joker. That's how pious people were, you know, they were just on a different level. They only wanted Allah, they never wanted to impress the people at all. They only wanted to impress Allah, that's about it. The Creator, nothing to do with the creation. حدثنا إسحاق بن منصور حدثنا عبد الرزاق حدثنا معمر عن ثابت عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه. Can you just imagine, most of these hadiths which are regarding jokes have been narrated by Anas رضي الله عنه. Most of these hadiths in this chapter have been narrated from Anas رضي الله عنه. Anas رضي الله عنه was a little boy in his teens. أن رجلا من أهل البادية, like when a few months ago, about 2 or 3 months ago, I gave a talk on the life of Fatima رضي الله عنها. Now you get some people, some sects who claim to be part of the Ahlul Sunnah, part of the Muslims, who say that there was some enmity between Aisha radiallahu anha and Fatima radiallahu anha. But when I was studying the treasure of hadith, most of the virtues of Fatima radiallahu anha has been narrated by none other than Aisha radiallahu anha herself. Amazing. Amazing. You know, I read a quotation the other day. Somebody came to one pious person, he said, who do you think is greater, Fatima or Aisha? Who do you think is greater, Fatima or Aisha? So he said, who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? All I can say, in Jannah, Fatima will be in the palace of Ali radiallahu anh, Aisha will be in the palace of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's all I can say. So Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu says, أن رجلا من أهل البادية كان اسمه ظاهرا. Amazing, this is a very amazing narration. وكان يهدي إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم هدية من البادية فيجهزه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أراد أن يخرج. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن ظاهرا باديتنا ونحن حاضروه. وكان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يحبه وكان رجلا دميما. فأتاه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوما وهو يبيع متاعه فاحتضنه من خلفه وهو لا يبصره. فقال من هذا؟ أرسلني. فالتفت فعرف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فجعل لا يألو ما ألصق ظهره بصدر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حين عرفه. فجعل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من يشتري هذا العبد؟ فقال رجل يا رسول الله إذن والله تجدني كاسدا. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لكن عند الله لست بكاسد أو قال أنت عند الله غال. What an amazing personality. Anas ibn Malik narrates a resident of the wilderness, from the desert. A resident, a person who was living in the desert wilderness, whose name was Zahir. His name was Zahir bin Hiram al-Ashja'i radiallahu anh. Whenever he visited the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he brought with him presents of the village, of the deserts. You know, he used to bring something from the village, vegetables, etc. Whatever natural thing, you know, they used to grow, they used to work on, and present it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he intended to leave Medina, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam presented him with provisions of the city. He said, okay, you bought something for us, take something back from us as well. Right? Once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Zahir is our village and we are his city. Zahir is our wilderness and we are his city, meaning he brings things for us from there and we give things from here to him. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was attached to him. Zahir radiallahu anhu was not very handsome. He was not very handsome. Very dark complexion, you can say. Dameeman. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to him once while he was standing in a place. And this is something which we need to realize as Muslims. Racism, looking down on somebody just because of their background, just because of their complexion, just because of whether they're handsome or not, is not only a sin, it's kufr. I think about 2 or 3 years ago they had that World Anti-Racial Day, or International Anti-Racial Week or something. So I went to one of the universities for the khutbah. So somebody asked me that, can I just do a quick interview? So I said, okay. So what does Islam say about racism and this anti-racism? What do you have to say about it? So I said, in Islam there's no place for it. You'll either be a Muslim and you can never be a racist, or the minute you become racist you lose your iman. So how do you do that? So I said, look, the Prophet ﷺ is in Hajj. He's in Hajj. And he is just leaving Arafat. Arafat you leave at the time of Maghrib, but you don't read Maghrib in Arafat. You read whatever time you reach Muzdalifah, that's when you read Maghrib and Isha together. So he's about to leave Arafat, everybody's ready to move. And the Prophet ﷺ said, no, wait. I'm just waiting for my companion who's going to be traveling, mounting in the same animal, same transport as me. So everybody's waiting, everybody's getting frustrated, like, who are we waiting for now? Who is delaying us? And then all of a sudden, Usama ibn Zayd, the Prophet ﷺ's adopted son, Zayd, radiallahu anhu, we know his story, he got kidnapped and all that. And then his son Usama, he came along. So the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, my companion is here. And he made him mount. So some people, they looked at him because he wasn't very handsome. He wasn't very good in complexion. So some people, they looked at him, really? We waited all this time for this guy. So what was the point of waiting? We literally wasted our time. They looked down on him because of his complexion, the way he was. The narrator of this incident, Urwa, he says, at the demise of the Prophet ﷺ, all those people left Islam. All those people, they lost the iman, they became kafir, became apostates. And the reason, Urwa says, is because they looked down on Usama at that time, Allah took iman away from them. Because they looked down on a person, another Muslim, because of his background, because of his complexion, Allah took iman away from them. May Allah save us. So Zahir was, so the Prophet ﷺ, once when he was in the market, Zahir radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah ﷺ came to him once whilst he was standing in a place and selling his merchandise. He was selling his things. Rasulullah ﷺ caught him in between the arms from the back in such a manner that Zahir radiallahu anhu could not see him. They grabbed him, maybe blocked his eyes or something. Do you know who I am or something, in such a way that you couldn't tell who's grabbed him from the back. Zahir radiallahu anhu said, who is this? Leave me. But when he saw with the corner of his eyes that it was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he straightened his back and began pressing to the chest of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Amazing. Can you just imagine the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing this type of thing? He actually going to the market and he grabbed somebody from the back. Who am I? Which imam can you imagine today doing this kind of thing? Never mind an imam. A normal person would not say, we're in a marketplace, public place, I need to act, decent. I can't do, these childish type of, actions. The Prophet of Allah is doing it in the marketplace. So then, for as long as he gained this opportunity, it was better than 1,000 gifts. Just imagine straightening his back upon the chest of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then said, who will purchase this slave? Chalo, you're for sale. Shall I sell you? Zahir radiallahu anhu said, O Prophet of Allah, if you shall sell me, you will sell a defective thing and earn a very little sum. Meaning, you won't get much out of me. Nobody will buy me. No, I'm not that handsome, I'm not that person of some status, I live in the villages, who will buy me? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, you are not defective in the sight of Allah. but more valuable. You're so valuable in the sight of Allah. Amazing. Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam coming and embracing him from the back and covering the eyes of Sayyidina Zahir radiallahu anhu was being humorous to him. Amazing. This saying that who shall purchase him was also in joking, because Sayyidina Zahir radiallahu anhu was not a slave but a free man. He was just joking with him. You go to the market and you grab someone, who wants to buy this guy, who wants to buy this guy. Some of the commentators have written that this hadith is about joking, but in reality it is full of virtues and hidden benefits. When Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam found him engrossed in selling his merchandise, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam feared that because he was so busy selling, it will keep him away from the remembrance of Allah. Therefore Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam caught him from the back, and then the embrace would be a means of returning him to the remembrance of Allah. He's too much into it. And as a reminder, he said, is there anyone who will purchase this slave? It's because who is engrossed in things other than the remembrance of Allah is like a slave of his own desires. It's like a slave of his own desires. The embrace of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam totally awakened his faculties of the remembrance of Allah. That is why Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him the good news that his status in the sight of Allah is not low, but that of an elevated one. Subhanallah. Amazing. Inshallah, I will just read through, and then we only have one little hadith, and then we inshallah finish. So Abdul Razak al-Badr says, Zahir used to bring gifts to the Prophet ﷺ from the items that the Bedouins used to make, such as dry milk, ghee, these natural things. In return, the Prophet ﷺ used to reciprocate with better gifts when Zahir wanted to leave. Today unfortunately, even when we give gifts, it's like bribery. He gave me a £10 worth gift, I should make sure I only give him a £10 worth gift. He gave me £5 in his wedding, I'm only going to give, when the time comes in his family, then I'm only going to give that £5 note. I'm not going to give anything more. It's like we see how much we were given according to that. No, this is not what, this is more like, you're buying and selling something. You're trying to do business here. What we learn from the life of the Prophet ﷺ is, whatever you can give, you give. Whatever he can give, he will give. If he can, like a few chapters before, one girl came to the Prophet ﷺ with fruits, dates, fresh dates, with a whole tray, and the Prophet ﷺ used to love cucumbers and dates. And the Prophet ﷺ had just received some jewelry from some place. He put his hand into it, and he took a whole palm out, and he gave it to the girl in return. Now what's the comparison between fruits and a whole chunk of gold and pearls? But whatever they could give, they gave. Whatever the Prophet of Allah had, he gave. Amazing. This is what we learn. We need to understand. The statement of the Prophet ﷺ was, Zahir is our desert and we are his city, was to show that both sets of people complete each other, as the people in the desert need the ones in the city, and the people in the city need the ones living in the desert. This hadith shows that joking is not limited to words, but also include actions. You don't only have to joke verbally, you can also joke with your actions as well. Amazing. Can be seen from the act of the Prophet ﷺ when he held Zahir from the back. The reason Anas radiallahu anhu mentioned Zahir's appearance was to clarify the reason why Zahir described himself as defective merchandise, that no one would want to buy him. The statement of the Prophet ﷺ to Zahir shows the virtue of this companion, and at the same time goes in line with the other hadith. Allah does not look at your image and wealth, rather he looks at your deeds and your hearts. The virtue of a person depends on his piety and not in his physical appearance. Not how beautiful your face is, but how beautiful your heart is. That is what Allah looks at. Inshallah, we just go through the final hadith, inshallah, and then we finish. حدثنا عبد الله بن حميد حدثنا مصعب بن مقدام حدثنا المبارك بن فضالة عن الحسن قال أتت عجوزة إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقالت يا رسول الله ادعو الله أن يدخلني الجنة. فقال يا أم فلان إن الجنة لا تدخلها عجوز. قال فولت تبكي. فقال أخبروها أنها لا تدخلها وهي عجوز، إن الله تعالى يقول إنا أنشأناهن إنشاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا. Subhanallah. Hassan Basri rahmatullah alayhi says that an old woman came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and made a request. What did she say? O Messenger of Allah, make dua to Allah that He may grant me entrance into Jannah. He grants me entrance into Jannah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, O mother, an old woman cannot enter Jannah. You know, she was an old woman. The Prophet of Allah said, O mother, old woman cannot enter Jannah. Sorry, that is not possible. That woman began crying. She took it seriously and began to leave. The Prophet ﷺ said, say to the woman that one will not enter Jannah in the state of old age, but Allah will make all the women of Jannah young virgins. Allah says in the Quran in Surah Waqi'ah, Inna ansha'nahunna insha'a, we have created them a new creation and made them virgins, lovers, friends of equal age. Subhanallah, amazing. You know how the Prophet of Allah, you know, on a lighter note, broke the ice. The woman got emotional. You know, I've lost my Jannah. All women know, all women in Jannah. Al-Bayjuri rahmatullahi says the statement of the Prophet ﷺ was intended to teach the woman in a humorous manner that all women will be created new and the age when they enter paradise will be 33. As stated in the hadith reported by Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu and documented in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi. So everybody will be around 33. May Allah grant us Jannah. May Allah give us the ability to follow the Prophet ﷺ in everything of life, even in our jokes. We want to joke like the Prophet ﷺ. We want to have a light moment, following the teachings of Rasul ﷺ. And inshallah I will just go through the Khulasa. Khulasa is an amazing book, you know. He just mentions the final. His sallallahu alaihi wasallam joking, he would say to Sayyidina Anas radiallahu anhu, O you with the ears. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the brother of Sayyidina Anas radiallahu anhu who had a small bird, Abu Umair, what has happened to the little bird? But in spite of his joking, he only spoke the truth, to the point. Now, this is mentioning to the point. He said to an old woman who asked him about entrance into Jannah, an old woman will not go to Jannah. He meant that she would enter it as a young woman. May Allah grant us understanding. May Allah give us the ability to follow the Prophet ﷺ in everything of life, in our walking, talking, in our day, in our night, in our eating, sleeping, even in our joking, in our light moments. That is the way to success. That is the way to Jannah. May Almighty Allah grant all of us the understanding. Ameen wa sallallahu wa sallam ala rasulina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.